Hello everyone, welcome to lecture 10. The plan for this lecture is as follows. In this lecture we will discuss about the theoretical instantiation of pseudo random generators, for which we will introduce the concept of one way function, and after introducing the concept of one way function we will see how to design PRG with one bit expansion, and then we will see how to design PRG with arbitrary expansion. So, the question that we want to answer is, do PRGs exist? So, recall that in the last lecture we had seen that if you have a pseudo random generator, then using that you can design stream ciphers which allow you to encrypt long messages using short key. So, the question that we now want to answer is, do such PRGs exist or not? And to recall, a PRG is a deterministic algorithm which takes a seed or an input of size little l bits, which we denote by S, and it expands its output and it produces an output which is significantly large than the input. And the security of PRG means that the output of this deterministic algorithm G should be computationally indistinguishable from the output of a truly random generator of the same size, right. So, it turns out that there are two ways to design PRGs. The first way is provably secure constructions of PRGs from one way function. And when I say provably secure, I mean that the constructions that we give using one way function, for that we give a proof that indeed the construction is a PRG, in the sense that there exists no polynomial time distinguisher which can distinguish the outcome of the resultant PRG from the corresponding true random number generator. Unfortunately, we cannot use them in practice because the amount of computation that are involved in the resultant construction are of order of several magnitude. On the other hand, there are practical instantiations of pseudo random generators, but unfortunately they are not provably secure. In the sense, we believe that they are heuristically secure, because ever since their construction no weakness have been reported for such pseudo random generators. But the advantage of such heuristically secure pseudo random generators are they are super fast. So, that is why in practice we prefer to use such an instantiation. So, the focus for this lecture will be the provably secure construction instantiation of pseudo random generators from one way function. In the next lecture we will discuss about the practical instantiations of pseudo random generator. So, let me introduce the concept of one way function, or OWF in short. So, it is a function from the domain of bit string to the codomain of bit string denoted by little f, and informally it is a function which is easy to compute but difficult to invert. More specifically, there are two requirements from this function. The first requirement is that it should be easy to compute, namely if you are given any input x, computing the value of the function on that input x should be polynomial time, polynomial in the size of the input x. The second requirement, which is the interesting property from this one way function, is the hard to invert property. Namely, the requirement is that if you are given a random sample y from the codomain, then finding the pre-image or one of the pre-images of this given y in polynomial time should be difficult, except with a negligible probability. And this property is modeled by an experiment. So, in this experiment we are given the description of a publicly known function f, and the name of the experiment is invert, played with respect to a polynomial time algorithm whose goal is to invert the output of a function on a random sample with respect to the function f, and n is the security parameter here. So, in this experiment we have two entities, namely the verifier and the adversary. So, the rules of the experiment are as follows. The verifier here picks a random x from the domain, which is an arbitrary bit string, and computes the value of the function on that input x, which is given as a challenge for the adversary. So, the adversary is not aware of the input x, it only sees the output of the function on the input x, namely y. And the goal or the challenge for the adversary is to invert this sample y, namely to find at least one of the pre-images of this given value y. So, it submits its response, namely x dash, and we say that the function f has one wayness property if any polynomial time algorithm A participating in this experiment, there exists a negligible function, say negligible n, such that the probability that adversary is indeed able to output x dash, which is actually a pre-image of the given y, is upper bounded by a negligible function. That means, we require that no polynomial time algorithm should be able to invert this random y except with a negligible probability. So, in this definition the requirement is that the success probability of the adversary to invert the random y should be upper bounded by a negligible function, not by 0, because there always exists a guessing strategy by the adversary, namely adversary can simply guess a random x dash, and there always exists a non-zero probability that the guessed x dash indeed turns out to be one of the pre-images of the given y. That is why in the definition we do not require that, or we do not enforce that the condition that A should be able to invert the sample y should be upper bounded by 0. We give the leverage and we upper bound the success probability of the adversary by a negligible probability. Also notice that it is not required by the adversary to find the exact x, because the function can be a many to one function. So, it could be possible that the given y, which is thrown as a challenge to the adversary, has several pre-images. The goal of the adversary is to find one of those pre-images, right. So, let us see an example to make our understanding clear. Consider the function f, which is a 2 input function, and the function is from the set of natural numbers to the set of natural numbers. So, the function take 2 inputs from the set of natural numbers, and the output of the function is basically the product of the 2 inputs. Now, the question is this function a one way function? That means, if someone gives you the value of x dot y, where x and y are not known to you, will you be able to invert or find one of the pre-images, namely a pair of x comma y such whose product is equal to the given product in polynomial amount of time? And it turns out that there indeed exists a simple algorithm to find one of the pre-images, and the algorithm is as follows. So, you are given a random sample z, which is basically the output of the function on a pair of unknown inputs x comma y, and your inversion algorithm is as follows. The algorithm checks whether z is even or odd. If z is even, then the algorithm outputs the following pair of pre-images. The first pre-image x dash is 2 and the second pre-image y dash is z by 2. So, that is a pair of input which would actually give you the output z. Whereas, if the sample z which is given to you is odd, then you just randomly output x dash comma y dash from the set of natural numbers. So, it turns out that the success probability of this inversion algorithm is actually 3 by 4, because since the function is a 2 input function, the possible values of x comma y could be odd comma odd, odd comma even, even comma odd, and even comma even. And it turns out that out of these 4 combinations, for 3 of the combinations your z will always be even, and if z is even, then indeed the inversion algorithm that is used here, namely outputting 2 and z by 2 as the possible pre-image, is a successful algorithm. The only problematic case is when the sample x comma y is actually an odd comma odd pair, in which your z will not be an even number, in which case you might be outputting an incorrect x dash comma y dash. So, it turns out that in 3/4 of the instances, the adversary or this algorithm will be able to successfully invert the given value z. Hence, this function f is not a one way function, because the success probability of inversion is 3 by 4, which is a significant amount of probability, right. On the other hand, let us slightly modify this function. So, my function f of x y is still the product of x and y, but instead of saying that x and y are random natural numbers, I put the restriction here that x and y are random prime numbers of roughly same size. And it turns out that this function is now conjectured to be a one way function if x and y are large prime numbers, say of order 1024 bits. So, I stress here that it is just conjectured that this function f of x y, where x and y are arbitrary large prime numbers, is a one way function, because till now we do not have any polynomial time algorithm to invert this function. It is not proved formally that indeed this function is a one way function. And later on, when we will be discussing about the public key cryptography and we will be discussing number theory, there we will see several such candidate one way functions which are conjectured on several hard so called number theoretic hard problems. So, for the moment we will believe that this function f of x y, where x and y are arbitrary large numbers and the function is the product of the x and y, is a candidate one way function. So, now let us define another related concept, namely that of one way permutation or OWP, and basically a one way permutation is a one way function which also happens to be a bijection, namely the mapping is now a 1-1 onto mapping. That means, each y from the codomain will have a unique pre-image, and the requirement or the hard to invert part for the one way permutation is that if you are given a random y from the codomain, the challenge for the adversary is to find out the unique pre-image x which would have actually given that y in polynomial amount of time. So, the difference here is for the case of one way function, the random challenge y could have several pre-images and your goal was to find one of those pre-images. In the case of one way permutation, the random sample y which is given to you will have only unique pre-image and your goal is to find that unique pre-image in polynomial amount of time. Notice that both in the case of one way function as well as in one way permutation, we put the restriction that the inversion algorithm should take polynomial amount of time, because if we do not put any restriction on the amount of time which is given to the inversion algorithm, then there always exists a brute force algorithm, namely the algorithm can try over all possible candidate x from the set of candidate x, and definitely it will hit upon one x which would given the random y which is thrown as the challenge, but the running time of this brute force algorithm will be exponentially or it will be proportional to the size of the domain, and if the size of the domain is exponentially large, then the inversion algorithm's running time is also exponential. So, that is why in the experiment where we model the inversion part both for the one way function as well as one way permutation, we put the restriction that the running time of the adversary should be polynomial time. So, now let us discuss another interesting related concept, namely that of hard code predicate, which will be useful when we will design our candidate pseudo random generator from one way function. And the motivation for this hard code predicate is as follows. So, imagine you are given a function f which is say a one way function or a one way permutation, and if you are given the value of function on a random input x, then definitely computing the entire x in polynomial amount of time is difficult, because that is what is the property of a one way function or a one way permutation. But that does not necessarily mean that you cannot compute anything about x in polynomial time. There might be some information about x which you can compute from the value of f of x in polynomial amount of time. So, basically hard code predicate models what can be computed about x from f of x in polynomial amount of time, and what cannot be computed. To make my point more clear, consider this function and say this function f is a one way function, and using this function I design another function g which is now a 2 input function, and the function g on the input pair x1 comma x2 is defined as the output consists of x1 as it is, and the second part of the output of this function g is actually the value of the function f on the second part of the input, namely x2. That is the way I am defining my function g. And my claim is that if the size of x1 and x2 are roughly same, namely some polynomial function in the security parameter, then if the function f with which we start is a one way function, then the constructed function g which is constructed like this is also a one way function, right. So, basically the idea here is that if g is not a one way function, that means if someone gives you the value of g of x1 comma x2 and you can actually find out x1 comma x2 in polynomial amount of time, then intuitively using that algorithm you can also compute the value of x2 using just given f of x2. So, we can formally establish this fact using a reduction argument. So, I am not going into the reduction argument, but basically the idea here is that if f is one way function, then the function g which is a 2 input function constructed like this is also a one way function, provided both x1 and x2 are of roughly same size. Now, if you see the function g, it turns out that even though it is a one way function, by seeing the output of this function g on a random pair of input, you actually end up learning the one half of the input, right, because the first half of the output is actually the first half of the input as it is. In that sense, even though this function g is a one way function, it is not the case that if I give you the value of this function g on an arbitrary pair of input, you cannot compute back the entire input in polynomial amount of time. There is something which you can compute, there is something which you cannot compute in polynomial amount of time. So, this notion of hard code predicate precisely models what is polynomial time computable from the value of the function f of x on a random input x, right. So, let us see the formal definition of this hard code predicate. So, imagine you are given a function from a domain of bit string to the codomain of bit string, and I stress that the function need not be a one way function, it could be a normal function. So, we are given a function f and Corresponding to the function f, we define another function h c, which is a Boolean function. That means, it takes an arbitrary Boolean input, a binary string as an input, and it produces a Boolean output 0, 1. And then we say that this function h c associated with the function f is a hard code predicate if the following two conditions are hold. If the following two conditions hold. The first condition is that if you are given a random input x, then computing the value of this function hard code predicate, namely h c of x, should be polynomial time computable. That means, you should be able to compute the value of h c of x in polynomial time, polynomial in the size of the input x. The second interesting property, which actually makes hard code predicate very interesting, is the following, that if you are given the value of f of x for a randomly chosen x, then it is not possible to compute the value of h c of x with probability significantly better than half in polynomial amount of time. That means, the challenge here is that if I give you f of x and I do not tell you the value of x, where x is randomly chosen, then even after learning f of x, you should not be able to compute the value of the function h c of x in polynomial amount of time, except with probability negligible better than half. If that is the case, then we say that the function h c of x, h c is actually a hard code predicate associated with the function f. So, this requirement of inability to compute the value of h c of x with probability significantly better than half by a polynomial time algorithm is modeled by an experiment, which we call as hard code experiment. And now, this experiment is designed with respect to a function f, which is publicly known, which is a candidate function, which could be a candidate one way function or one way permutation, or it could just be a function, and associated with the function f, which have a candidate hard code predicate, which is a Boolean function, and the experiment involved two entities. So, the rule of the experiment is as follows: the verifier here picks a random x from the domain, computes the value of the function on that input x, and the corresponding output y is given as a challenge to the adversary. And the goal of the adversary, or the challenge for the adversary, is after seeing the value of y, it has to compute the value of h c of x without knowing the x. So, since h c of x is going to be a bit, it submits the adversary outputs a bit, which could be either 0 or 1, and we say that adversary has won the game if actually b is equal to h c of x. So, that means we say that the function h c associated with the function f is a hard code predicate if for any polynomial time algorithm participating in this experiment, the probability that adversary outputs b, where b is actually equal to h c of x, is upper bounded by half plus some negligible probability or negligible function in the security parameter. If that is the case, then we say that the function f that the function h c is a hard code predicate associated with the function f. So, notice that in definition we bound the success probability of the adversary to be half plus negligible. We do not require that the success probability of the adversary should be 0, because there is always a guessing strategy or guessing adversary who can just guess a bit, and there always exists a probability of 1 by 2 that the guess is indeed the value of h c of x correctly. Apart from that, we are also willing to give the adversary an extra negligible advantage in successfully outputting the hard code predicate, because we are in the computationally secure world, right. So, that is the definition of hard code predicate. So, now the question is if we are given a candidate one way function or a one way permutation, does there exist an associated hard code predicate or not? And it turns out that interestingly the answer is yes, and that is because of a very fundamental theorem in cryptography, which is also called as Goldrake-Levin theorem. And Goldrake-Levin theorem basically shows you how to construct a hard code predicate associated with any given one way function or any given one way permutation. So, we will not be going into the proof of the Goldrake-Levin theorem, we will just roughly see the theorem statement and intuition of the security. So, the theorem statement is as follows. So, imagine you are given a candidate one way function, say f, or a candidate one way permutation. Now, using this candidate function f, we construct a two input function g, and the construction of g is as follows. So, it passes the input as x comma r, and the output of the g is defined as follows. So, we evaluate the function f on the first part of the input of g, that constitutes the first part of the output of g, and the second part of the input of g is copied as it is in the output of the g. And here the size of the two inputs of the g, namely x and r, are of same order. So, that is the way we define our function g. Now, we can prove formally that if the function f with which we start with is a one way function or a one way permutation, then the function g which we have constructed like this is also a one way function or a one way permutation respectively. And the proof is by a reduction argument, namely we can show that if you have a polynomial time algorithm to invert the output of the function g that you have constructed on a random pair of input x comma r. That means, if you have an algorithm who without knowing the random pair of input x comma r, but just seeing the value of g of x comma r can give you back x comma r in polynomial amount of time, then using the same inversion algorithm we can construct another polynomial time algorithm which when given the value of f of x on a random x without knowing the value of x can actually give you back the value of x, which is a contradiction to the fact that f is a one way function or a one way permutation. So, that is a straightforward reduction argument using which we can prove this claim. So, now we will focus on the function g, and what Goldreich-Levin theorem shows you basically that if this function g is a one way function, then we can associate a corresponding hardcore predicate with this function g. Namely, the hardcore predicate is the Boolean function which basically takes a random linear combination of the bits of the input x, right. So, what we consider here is that your r is interpreted as a bit string of length n and your x is also considered as a bit string of length n. These are the two inputs for the function g, and associated hardcore predicate which is associated with the function g is denoted by the function gl, and the function gl is basically the random linear combination of the bits of the x where the combiners are defined by the bit representation of the input r. And what the Goldreich-Levin theorem claims basically that this function gl of x comma r is a hardcore predicate associated with the function g. That means, if someone gives you the value of the function g of x comma r for a random x and r, then except with probability half plus negligible, no polynomial time algorithm can compute the value of gl of x comma r. And the intuition behind this the proof of the Goldreich-Levin theorem is that even though you are given f of x, since you do not know the value of x, basically the challenge for computing the Goldreich the output of the function gl of x comma r is basically to compute the XOR of the random subsets of the bit of x, but since the adversary will not know the exact bits of the x, it will be difficult for the adversary to compute that XOR of the random subsets of the bits of x. That is basically the intuition of this theorem. However, it turns out that the proof of this theorem is indeed challenging and involved. So, the students who are interested to go through the proof of this Goldreich-Levin theorem, they can refer to the book by Katz and Lindell where they have given the detailed proof. But for our discussion, we will assume that the function gl x comma r is the associated hardcore predicate which is associated with our candidate one way function g of x comma r, right. So, assuming we have now a hardcore predicate and we have a candidate one way permutation, let us see how we can construct PRG with minimal expansion. And what we mean by minimal expansion is that we will assume that we are given a candidate one way permutation from the set of n bit strings to the set of n bit strings. That means, the function f takes an input which is a set of a string of length n, and it produces an output which is also a string of length n, and it is a one way permutation, and associated with the function f we have a hardcore predicate. Now, given this, we will construct a pseudo random generator where the construction of the pseudo random generator is as follows. So, we call the algorithm as g, which takes an input s which is a random input of size n bits, and it is going to produce an output of n plus 1 bits. So, the first n bits of the output is nothing but the value of the function f on the input s, and the last output bit of the function g is basically the value of your hardcore predicate on the input s. And the theorem statement that we are now going to prove is that if the function f is a one way permutation and HP is the associated hardcore predicate, then the construction g that we have given here is actually a pseudo random generator which expands its input by 1 bit. That is why it is actually a PRG with minimal expansion, because that is the minimum amount of expansion which you expect from a PRG, because if the output of PRG is same as the input of PRG, then that is not a PRG as per our definition of PRG, because the first requirement from the PRG definition is that the output should be larger than the size, the size of the output should be more than the size of the input. So, the minimum such condition is when the size of the output is 1 more than the size of the input, and that is why this PRG is a PRG with minimal expansion. So, pictorially this is your algorithm G. You take the input of size n, which is a uniformly random bit string, and you produce a bit string of length n plus 1, and we want to prove that this algorithm G is a pseudo random generator. Namely, we want to prove that the output of this algorithm G is indistinguishable from the output of a true random number generator, say G dash, which also outputs strings of length n plus 1, where the algorithm G dash differs from the algorithm G in the sense that all the n plus 1 output bits of G dash are uniformly random and independent of each other, whereas the outputs of algorithm G actually depend upon the input S. And intuitively, if we see the difference between the output of PRG and output of the algorithm G dash is actually in the last bit, because if we compare the first n output bits of the algorithm G and the first n output bits of the algorithm G dash, the distribution is actually the same, namely the uniform distribution over the set of n bit strings. This is because if the seed S to the algorithm G is uniformly random, then the function output f of s is also going to be uniformly random. That means, this output f of s is actually indistinguishable from the output capital R. The difference is only in the last part of the output of G and the last bit of the output of G dash. For the case of G dash, the last output bit is a uniformly random bit, but for the algorithm G, the last bit is actually the value of the hardcore predicate on the input S. And it turns out that from the definition of hardcore predicate, the output bit HP of S is actually computationally indistinguishable from the uniformly random bit. That means, no polynomial time algorithm can distinguish between the uniformly random bit B and the bit HP of S, because that is what is the definition of hardcore predicate. And that is precisely the argument which we are going to use to prove that the construction G that we are given is actually a pseudo random generator. We can actually formally establish that if the algorithm G which you are constructed is not a pseudo random number generator, then there exists an algorithm, polynomial time algorithm, which when given the value of f of s, without knowing the value of s, can actually compute the value of HP of s with probability significantly better than half, and that will be a contradiction to the assumption that the function HP is the associated hardcore predicate corresponding to the function f. So, that formal argument we can establish through a reduction. I am leaving that reduction and the formal details to you as an assignment. So, that is the way we can design a PRG whose output is 1 more than the size of input, but in practice we might be interested to construct pseudo random generator where the size of the output is significantly large compared to the size of the input. So, now what we are going to do is, using the previous construction where the output of the PRG is 1 more than the size of the input, we are going to construct another pseudo random generator whose output is actually whose output is polynomially large compared to the size of input. And this will be done by doing a sequential composition of pseudo random generators, where we will be executing several instances of the pseudo random generator that we have constructed in the last slide, polynomial amount of time in sequence one after the other. And this will be different from the polynomial composition of pseudo random generators which we had seen in one of our earlier lectures. So, now in this construction we are assuming that we are given a pseudo random generator which takes a n bit seed, uniformly random n bit input, and gives a output of length n plus 1. And for your example, you can take the construction G to be the same that we have constructed in our last slide using the one way function and hardcore predicate. Now, using this function G, our goal is to construct a new PRG which takes an input of size n and produces an output of length n plus big L bits, where big L is some polynomial function in your security parameter n. And this is how we will construct the new pseudo random generator G new, by sequentially composing the function G polynomial amount of time. So, what we do here is we invoke an instance of the algorithm G on the input S, and the input S will be the seed for our algorithm G new which we are constructing. So, the input S for the G new is actually passed as an input for the algorithm G, and as a result G produces an output of size n plus 1 bits. So, we parse that input as R1 comma S1, where R1 is a single bit and the remaining n bits is denoted by S1. Now, what we do is we actually invoke another invocation of the PRG with a seed value S1. So, seed value S1 is a string of length n bits. So, that fits the semantic of my algorithm G, and I invoke the second invocation of the algorithm G using S1 as seed, which produces an output of size n plus 1 bits, which again is passed as a bit R2 concatenated with the remaining part, which is a string of length n bits. And now again I keep on doing this process repeatedly one after the other L number of times, and the final invocation of the PRG will be on the last output of the will be on the output produced by the last second last output of the PRG, namely SL minus 1, and it produces an output of length n plus 1 bits, which again we parse as RL comma SL. So, the overall output of this algorithm G nu will be nothing but the concatenation of R1, R2, RL minus 1, RL along with SL. So, what basically we are doing here is we are actually invoking the algorithm G, the existing algorithm G, L number of times, and in each invocation we are actually generating one pseudo random output and a pseudo random seed, where the pseudo random seed is actually used for the next invocation of the PRG, and this process is repeated L number of times. So, the claim here is that if the existing algorithm G is a pseudo random generator, then the new algorithm or the new construction that we have designed G nu is also a pseudo random generator, provided L is some polynomial function in the security parameter n. And now you can see that why this construction is called as a sequential composition. Here we are not invoking, here the invocations of G are not independent of each other, they actually depend on the previous output of the, or the next invocation of the G actually depends upon the output of the previous invocation of G. In that sense, it is a sequential composition of the pseudo random generators. So, the theorem statement that we want to prove is the following, and the proof will be using the hybrid argument, because if you see pictorially there are polynomial number of invocations of G which are involved here, and we cannot directly reduce the security of the algorithm G nu to the security of the algorithm G, because there are polynomial number of invocations. So, to get around this we actually introduce hybrid argument, and for the demonstration, for the sake of demonstration, we assume that n is equal to 3 and big L is equal to 2. Namely, I assume that the G nu construction that we are giving takes a seed of length 3 bits and it produces an output of 5 bits. So, what we are going to do in the hybrid argument is as follows. We are going to introduce polynomial number of intermediate hybrids. So, we start with the first algorithm G dash, and the output of the algorithm G dash basically is a collection of n plus 2 uniformly random bits. So, since n is equal to 3 and L is equal to 2 here, basically the algorithm outputs a string of length 5 where all the bits are uniformly random, and that is precisely is the output that a true random number generator of length 5 would actually look like. That is the construction of your algorithm G dash. Whereas, the construction that we had given, namely the sequential construction, will look something as this. We start with a seed of length 3 bits, right, that is your seed, and we invoke the algorithm G and produce a pseudo random output of size 4 bits. Now, what we do is we take the first output bit to be the overall output of the algorithm G nu, and the remaining 3 bits are actually used as the seed for the next invocation of G. So, actually in this pictorial representation I am doing it other way around. I am setting the last bit of the first invocation of G to be the overall output or the overall last bit of the algorithm G nu, and the first 3 output bits of the first invocation of G is used as the seed for the next invocation of G, and it does not make any difference here. You can use any way, any representation for your convenience here. So, the second invocation of G is actually now on a pseudo random string of length 3 bits, and it produces an output of length 4 bits, which is actually concatenated with the first bit which was the last bit which was generated by the previous invocation of G, and that is how you would have actually obtained a pseudo random string of length 5 bits. That is the construction of your algorithm G nu, and our goal is to prove that no polynomial time distinguisher can distinguish apart a random sample which is produced by G dash from a random sample produced by G nu. That means, if it is thrown a uniformly random sample which is either generated by G dash or by G nu without actually knowing the way by which it is generated, then the distinguisher cannot find out in polynomial amount of time whether the sample that is given to him is actually generated as per G dash or as per G nu. To prove that, what we are going to do is we are going to introduce an intermediate hybrid or an intermediate construction which we call as G-int, and what this construction G-int does is it takes an input of size 4 bits which are uniformly random, and what it does is on the first 3 bits of the input it invokes an invocation of G and it produces a pseudo random output of length 4 bits, and the last bit of the input of G-int is copied as it is in the overall output, and that is the way the algorithm G-int produces a string of length 5 bits. So, you can see that you have now got 3 different constructions: the construction of a true random number generator which outputs a string of length 5 where all the 5 bits are uniformly random, the construction G-new which is the construction that we have proposed which produces a pseudo random string of length 5 bits by invoking by using 2 invocations of G, and we have an intermediate algorithm G-int which also produces a pseudo random string of length 5 bits, but by just using 1 invocation of algorithm G. Now, in the hybrid argument what we are going to prove is we can prove that if the construction G which expands a 3 bit uniformly random string to a 4 bit pseudo random string is a PRG, then the construction G dash and the construction G-int are indistinguishable. That means, no polynomial time distinguisher can distinguish apart a sample produced by G dash from a sample produced by G-int. That we can establish by reducing the security of the by reducing the distinguisher who can distinguish between G dash and G-int to a distinguisher who can actually distinguish between an output of the algorithm G from a truly random number generator which produces an output of length 4 bits. Right. So, I am not going into the details of the proof. I hope that you will be able to complete that proof. In the same way, we can prove that if the algorithm G is actually a pseudo random generator, then no polynomial time distinguisher can distinguish apart a random sample produced by G-int from a random sample produced by G-new, and again the proof will be by reduction. Right. That means, if you have a polynomial time distinguisher who can distinguish apart a sample of G-int from a sample of G-new, then we can show via reduction that the same distinguisher can be used to distinguish apart the output of the algorithm G from the output of a true random number generator which produces true random strings of length n plus 1 bits, which is a contradiction. So, now since we have 2 intermediate hybrids and the algorithm G dash is indistinguishable from the algorithm G-int and the algorithm G-int is indistinguishable from algorithm G-new, it follows that overall the algorithm G dash is also indistinguishable from the algorithm G-new. So, that is the way we can prove by hybrid argument that G dash and G-new are computationally indistinguishable. For the general case where big L is some polynomial function of the security parameter, we have to introduce L number of hybrids, and what we can do is we can prove that each pair of consecutive hybrids are computationally indistinguishable by reducing its security to the security of your underlying construction G. And since there are polynomial number of hybrids, we end up establishing that the algorithm G dash is computationally indistinguishable from the algorithm G-new. So, I leave the details of the formal proof to you as an exercise. So, that brings me to an end of this lecture. So, just to summarize, in this lecture we have seen provably secure constructions of pseudo random generators from one way functions. Namely, we have proved that if one way function exists, then corresponding to that one way function we can construct hardcore predicate, and using that hardcore predicate and one way function we can actually construct pseudo random generator which actually expands its input by 1 bit, and then using this construction, namely the pseudo random generator with 1 bit expansion polynomial amount of time in sequence, we can actually produce a pseudo random generator whose output is polynomially large compared to its input, and the construction is provably secure. Namely, we can prove that no polynomial time distinguisher exists for our construction, otherwise it reduces to the security of your underlying the security of the underlying one way function and the hardcore predicate. I hope you enjoyed this lecture. Thank you.